Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.
Fantastic. Well, I am absolutely delighted to talk to you about this subject today. I'm wildly thrilled about the new economy and to, I guess, offer you my thoughts about where we are now and where we're headed. So let's get started. First of all, marketing has changed quite a bit over the past 100 years. We started off between the years of 1915 to 1950, where really we reached the customer through mass ads. So those would be those print ads and magazine ads and billboards, and pretty much the consumer did or believed what we told them in print ad. And then we moved into more of a consumer age around the 1950s, where how we reached our customer and our target market was through offering them the highlights of the features and benefits of using our services or products. And again, in that age, really relying more on print as well as television and radio. Radio was huge, and people believed our claims based on what the features of our products and services were. And then we moved into our information age around 1980. And from 1980 to 2000, our consumers were behaving based on what we claimed the benefits of our brand was in comparison to our competitor. And so we had a lot of comparisons going on between 1980 and 2000 as to why using us or our product was better than using someone else's or another person's product. And then into the relationship age where we're at now, from about 2000 on, the whole dynamic has flipped. I mean, this is why we're calling it the new economy, in that our customers are very savvy now. And it has everything to do with this mass share of information that has exploded since we have the internet. And so people are talking. And what's happened now is that our entire economy is based on a relationship model. And this relationship, it has everything to do with the consumer now feeling as if they need to know us. They need to understand us. They want to be a part of our business. And sales and advertising nowadays is really based upon how you're going to touch your consumer is on values. It's much more personal. And our brand identity, whether it's a personal brand, whether you are a solopreneur or you're a huge global company, it really is your identity through the values that you have or you project and how you're reaching this end consumer through your relationship, so they feel a part of what you're doing. So these relationships are absolutely positively critical. And the reason it's gotten so critical and I would say juicy, if I could use that word, is the fact that we're actually talking. We're talking with our customer. And so enterprises really go from good into the realm of great by building these relationships, because our customers can do a lot for us with these relationships. So it's a two-way communication, and it's an interaction. So our customers not only want to receive information from us, but they actually want to give input, and they want to feel like their input is valuable. So the customer now is quite informed because of the internet. Our customers are savvy, they're intelligent, they expect us to pay attention to them, and they expect us to communicate with them. They also, I mean, we are now in a bit of a fishbowl in that everybody can see everything, and the customer can also instantaneously voice their opinion, either positively or negatively. And so social media plays a huge part in that customer having some power, and they know it. The customer knows they have this kind of power now. And it's an interesting line for a company to walk with respect to social media, whether it be a negative comment and how you address that, as well as, the positive comments can actually sell your product or service for you, but as we'll see in some future slides here. But what we have to look at is that because it is instantaneous, because we are so transparent these days, and someone can place a comment on Twitter or Facebook, and instantly everybody sees it. Now, whether or not that comment is true or not really doesn't matter. What matters is how we handle those comments, and we have to handle them immediately, or they do have the power to influence others. Our relationship economy is exactly a relationship. So this new economy is relationship driven, and a relationship is, like we mentioned, it's two ways. It's not a broadcast. It's trust building. People, we know, buy from those that they feel they know, so that's cultivating that relationship even if it's electronic, who they feel they know, who they like, and who they trust. And trust is built through a relationship. It's really this give and take, back and forth economic philosophy, which is bringing producers and consumers into a more symbiotic and communicative relationship than those previous economic models that we looked at. So consumer power, when consumers speak out, people are listening. It really goes back to the fact that all of us probably are more apt to buy or use a service from a company that we have had some sort of personal referral to, or someone has said something positive about them or liked their experience. We are more apt to be drawn to use those products or services, as well as if someone has negative comments about a product or service, we are more likely to avoid using that product or service based on a negative comment from someone. So here's some interesting charts. And consumers, 73% of consumers, and this is from Forbes magazine, 73% of consumers say that positive reviews influence their trust in a particular brand. But I thought this was interesting. 81% of consumers said that social media posts directly influenced their purchasing decision. So I thought that was phenomenal. 81% were influenced to make a purchase based on a social media post. So social media is absolutely critical. Companies that I worked with, even 5 years ago, were still skeptical over whether or not they would have a budget for social media. That's not even a conversation today. You don't get to decide whether or not you want to budget in social media because you just have to. 81% of U.S. consumers say social media posts directly influence their buying decisions, and so it would be a grave mistake not to take advantage of the fact that you can utilize and harness social media for profit. Absolutely. Leading brands use social engagement to drive their brand recognition. Again, it's that relationship building, and that positive relationship creates a very positive thought regarding a certain brand and the affiliation sells as well. If you take a look at social networking growth by age group in the United States, it's actually pretty astonishing. So I am not surprised that our millennials have been actively engaged this whole time. That's that red line you see all the way up until you see 90%. So 90% of our 18 to 29-year-olds using social media in the United States and all those social networks. This includes Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. But, I think the most interesting thing on this graph is you see that 65 plus, so we're talking about those that are 65 years and older, we have 50% of those folks on the social networks, and that has grown dramatically. And so I think that, if you look back in August of 2006, we weren't seeing any 65 years and older on the social networks much, and now we have 50%, and I'm sure if we even looked at these polls today, they'd be even higher. People are on those networks. Consumers expect us as business owners, whether you're an entrepreneur or you are a global company, consumers expect us to be engaged on social media. They want us to meet them where they're at. They want us to continue the conversation, cultivate that relationship, and again, that back and forth two-way communication. So when we look at the new relationship economy, we are also talking about social currency. And social currency is the total economic value of your relationships. And we're talking about not only your in real life relationships, but also your digital relationships. So these relationships actually have an incredible amount of value. And relationships are the key to our influence. We all of us build relationships in order to grow our social currency. And some are better at social relationships than others. But, you know, whether it's personal, you're at home with your family and you're cultivating those relationships, you know, if you look at social currency, if you've got great social currency with your children, they're going to respect and follow your direction because you've got a positive social currency there. If you've got negative currency and you've got a deficit there, you may not have much power or influence over those folks in your own personal life. It's the same. So as we cultivate our relationships and we work on them and we strengthen them and there's trust and there is respect and there is a back and forth, we have an incredible amount of influence and power, and that's what I mean about social currency. So how do you grow your social currency? First, engagement is critical. You have to be involved in the conversation. Like I said, no longer is it a choice for companies. They simply must be involved in the conversation. So engagement, and when I say engagement, I mean not broadcasting. Where we see companies failing miserably on social media is a broadcast model. And that goes back to the fact that the old print ads of the past don't work anymore. Those types of media campaigns do not work with our consumer of today. So you can't turn social media into a print ad and just broadcast. It doesn't work. It actually has to be a conversation, so a back and forth. In fact, on social media, for companies that I work with and I consult with, you know, we work on a blend of how many tweets or Facebook shares or LinkedIn, how many of those are sharing of just positive leadership type quotes and information and support versus something to do with their company. So you want to do a nice mix between a pitch. So if you're going to do a pitch or put something out there about the company, then you want your follow-up communications to be not about the company, not about the pitch, but more about the flavor, the personality, the value set of that company, so that your consumers who are engaging with you are also getting the feel good from you. They're feeling like they know you, they're feeling like they're involved with you, and you're not just pitching at them. In fact, companies who broadcast will typically have very low engagement numbers when we look at the metrics and run them. We'll talk about metrics soon. Using multiple channels to get out your message is imperative. You can't just rely on one channel. So what I mean by that is you can't simply have your Twitter account and rule the world on Twitter, but you have absolutely no presence on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. So you absolutely must mix up your social media channels to get your message out. And the reason I say that is, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but you will have different users preferring different social media channels. So the reason you're going to want to mix up the channels that you are engaged in is so that you can reach different demographics. And our celebrities that we see out there cannot be used as good examples or role models for how we want to run our social media, because there's no comparison. Celebrities can get away with things that businesses can't. Celebrities can post a tweet or a Facebook post or a LinkedIn that, you know, I just ate a banana for lunch, and they're going to get, you know, on Twitter 1,000 retweets and 982 faves. But, you know, the regular average individual or business cannot post anything remotely close to that and have the level of engagement because you're not a celebrity. I'm not a celebrity. Celebrities can do things we can't do, so we never, ever look at celebrities for a model of how we will engage. The other thing with social media is that our content absolutely must be relevant, and we have to engage our customer. So, you know, we need to be in the conversation that's important to them. So this is where understanding who our target market is, how they think, how they feel, how they make decisions. This is where later we'll talk about big data comes into play. So we want to make sure that our content is right there, living and breathing exactly where they are so that they feel connected to it intimately. Our social currency is directly related to social media. I mean, they drive a perpetual feedback loop, and each propels the other higher in the fact that the more social currency you have, which means the more influence that you wield, the more power that you have, the more social media engagement you will have. And the more social media engagement that you have, the more people involved in your conversation, the greater your social currency. So they really are a perpetual feedback loop, propelling one another higher and higher. Let's talk about metrics. How do we measure all of this? This is such the buzz right now for us. This is what we are working with companies to try to understand their numbers. The use of metrics to analyze your social media performance is important. Otherwise, you can't evaluate where you are, and you can't make decisions on how you want to grow it. So first of all, there are rating organizations. You are probably familiar with these. CRED is one. Clout, your Clout score, is another. And two companies that I use personally when I'm working with corporations is Engagement Labs and Twitterland. Both of those I can get a lot of great data from, and you know, I can even compare and contrast, say, when a company runs a promotional campaign. So for example, if we have, you know, McDonald's running a promo campaign out to the consumer, sending out tweets and offering a discount on a product, we can see the level of engagement with those customers, and then we can compare it to sales at that particular time and compare them to, say, Jack in a Box, a competitor, who may have also been running a campaign or not, and we'll see those in the engagement numbers as well. So it's interesting how you can take a look at your competitor, see what they're doing on social media, what's working for them on social media, so you can not only learn, but you can duplicate that process. And we do have numbers to measure that. And I very much like the type of metrics I can run on Engagement Labs. It's very detailed, and I can look at all kinds of different things for companies, as well as Twitterland has some great metrics on our demographics and our customers. The power of social media on branding is enormous. When you think about our brand, what's our perception out there in our global community? I mean, everything that we do as an individual, so a personal brand or a company, is seen by everybody. Like I said, we're at a giant fishbowl. The game has changed now that we live in the electronic age. So everything is seen, and it creates an awareness of the consumer about us. And it can be, you know, a vertical up. We can go up in our social media power and influence, or we can go down. And then a lateral. Lateral means we're not really capitalizing on what we could capitalize on. So it's nice to know when you're in a lateral growth phase so that you can move back up into your vertical upward. And brand identification is huge because this is what establishes for your customer the feeling, and I want to stress the word feeling, because this is where people are making their purchasing decisions from. they're feeling about you, your product, or your service. So via Twitter, I have that 61% of Twitter users follow brands just to interact with them, to share ideas and feedback. And what I want to say about this is the companies that I've worked with is when you are responsive to your audience, and I mean you are tweeting back, you are thanking them for a picture they posted of your product or them using your service, or if they shared an idea, if you're responsive to your customer, this is huge because they are there interacting with you because they want to be a part of you. Again, it's that relationship. So the influence is huge. Look at this. So if someone reads a product review, 92% of those of which were influenced to purchase, 46 were influenced to purchase, right? And this, I think, is even more critical. Look at this number. 43% decided not to buy after reading an online review. 43%. And how many of you have ever read a review that was negative or had several negative reviews and you decided not to make the purchase? I think this is huge. This is what we're talking about, that reviews and comments and what people have to say does influence the buying decisions of our consumer. So look at the next one. What drives the most relationship engagement across your marketing mix? So 54% is in the social media house. 54% is driving the relationship and engagement. And so 54% is a huge number. We absolutely better be paying attention to social media. Only 25% is email, and a whopping low 12% is our website. So social media absolutely must be a priority in our marketing mix. So what social media network do you use? I mean, there are a lot of different social media networks out there. And, you know, I also think it has to do with your target market because each social media network really has its own unique user. So if you think of social media as these various networks being different countries, and each country has its own culture. And I used to say that Twitter reminded me of a cocktail party. I mean, you have 140 characters, and you're in, you're out, you're tweeting fast. You don't have time for elaboration. And Facebook is more like the family get-together. There's no limit on how many words you can use, and there's pictures and a lot more personal shares on Facebook. And then if you take a look now, I'd say if we ran these numbers today, so these are from February of 2014, these statistics. If we ran them today, I would tell you that Instagram would be far higher. Instagram is hot, hot, hot right now. And if I could say anything, I would say make sure you are very involved on Instagram. YouTube will always be up there. People love to watch those short 2-minute video clips. And Twitter, I think, is always going to be one of my favorites because you can reach a lot of people, and it is real time. LinkedIn, its flavor is very different. So LinkedIn is more the professional network. And so you have to know the country you're in and the culture of that country when you begin interacting on these various networks. And engaging on various platforms is going to be key to casting your widest net possible. Because like I said, you're going to have different kinds of demographics on these various platforms. So content which performs well on Twitter, and I have run this for so many companies. We are looking at the metrics. We can have an incredible Twitter campaign and then try the same campaign on Facebook with ads, and it just doesn't run as well. And vice versa. What runs really well on Facebook may fall flat on Twitter. And again, I think it's culture in different countries. So you cannot, I would suggest as a company, you cannot run the same thing on all the platforms and expect it to perform well. It must be tweaked, shaped, and defined based upon the platform that you're putting it on. Social networks dominate content discovery. I think this was really interesting in that if you look at how people are learning, how people are finding out information these days, they are doing it through social networks and versus going to the web and doing a search. So people are very engaged in learning and acquiring new knowledge through their social networks. And I thought this was so interesting because we used to rely, those of you who can relate to me doing business when it was web-driven, right? We're doing our websites and we're looking for unique hits to our pages and completely obsessed with SEO and bounce rates. And now we're looking at, boy, they really are globbing onto new information through the social media networks as well. So again, like I say, in the new relationship economy, to harness that power for profit, we absolutely not only need to be web savvy and definitely pay attention to SEO, that will never die, but we absolutely positively must be incredibly engaged on social networks. How many of you have challenges with big data? I mean, all the companies that I have worked with, and then just recently in New York City last week at a summit of chief marketing officers of global multinational companies. The big topic was big data. And big data is a broad term for data sets that are so large or complex that traditional data processing applications are really rendered inadequate. The challenges include, analyzing this data. What does it mean? Capturing this data. How do we get it? Curation, search, sharing, storage, transfer, visualization, information privacy. I was involved last week in a conversation with CMOs on what is creepy versus responsive. So at what point is our data collection getting to be a little bit creepy for the consumer, prying a little too deeply into their buying habits versus what is really responsive? What is us just trying to do a better job of anticipating what they want so we can deliver? So examples included data from social networks. So we get a lot of data from social networks, purchasing systems, and demographic data. So big data, I guess the best way to explain big data is we have so much of it right now. It's almost like trying to take a drink from a fire hose. It is absolutely massive, and everyone is still trying to figure out how to harness big data for the best use. Big data analytics drives a deeper understanding of your customer. And this comes from McKinsey and Company report, but the use of big data will underpin new waves of productivity growth and consumer surplus. For example, we estimate that a retailer using big data to the fullest has the potential to increase its operating margin by more than 60%. Big data offers considerable benefits to consumers as well as to companies and organizations. For instance, services enabled by personal location data can allow consumers to capture $600 billion in economic surplus. So if you look at, this is from January 2015, very recent statistics for us. We have total population of 7.2 billion. And of that, 3 billion people are active Internet users. Yeah, this I thought was pretty surprising. 2 billion of the population are active social media on, with accounts. So these 2 billion we can reach through social media. That's how powerful it is. We have 3.6 billion unique mobile users. So mobile is important. Active mobile social accounts, 1.6 billion, and these are growing. So with this, means we are able to capture even more big data off of the use and the decisions that individuals are making through social media, because we're capturing all that information, as well as mobile, and then mobile social media. So this big data is huge, and whoever is able to harness this data and tease out the useful information really has the keys, and that's powerful. In fact, I've heard that if you don't know how to use big data, your competitor will. So the new economy really does equal engaged relationships, and this is important, engagement. The new economy is based on personal connection and the effective use of big data. So we just can't run the numbers and have all this great information. We actually have to take that information and then reconnect with the customer where they're at. And this is where you have the incredible marriage between those two. So values, ideas, and feelings sell just as much, if not more, than price and features. Social media and connections are becoming as important as mass advertising campaigns, and I'd say even more important. I see that as being even more important. People make purchasing decisions based upon feeling. Consumers want to feel connected and engaged by the brands they purchase, and they actually like to feel that they're supporting the brand with their money and time. And you see this support actually in social media when you have your own customers doing all your marketing for you. Your mission shares who you are as either a personal brand or a company. So a personal or company mission is the message you share with others, which lets them know what you or your company is all about. Consider what your company does and how it produces, creates value for your customer. So your customer's perception of you is shared through your mission. You want to create a mission statement reflective of your organization, and this should be such an inspiring statement that your employees are moved as well as your customers. So I gave it an example here of Apple. And their mission statement is, we design the best personal computers in the world, lead the digital music revolution, reinvented the mobile phone, and are defining the future of mobile media and computing devices. It's a very, very powerful mission statement, both motivational to an internal employee as well as an external customer. So we also have to have vision, not just a mission. And the vision is different. So a personal or company mission is the message we share with others, which lets them know about us. But a vision, on the other hand, is much more personal. It's not shared. It's strictly for you and the other members of your team. The vision defines what you want your company to be about and where you expect to see yourselves in the future. Your vision is the destination that you would like to reach in the future. It's what you and your company can aim for on a daily basis. I always say that the vision should be inspiring you, so when you wake up in the morning, you're excited about what you do, and you are intimately involved in knowing where you're going. In building relationships, your vision is really critical. I mean, having a concise vision, which everyone from the top down, so from your leadership C-suite all the way down to a new hire, can understand and integrate into their work, and creating this forward momentum toward, one cohesive, unified outcome. Understanding purpose and the path forward allows team members to communicate from a place of strength and understanding when they're working with customers. And this enhances the process of creating that mutually beneficial relationship. When your employees, when your customer service team, when your C-suite, when everybody's on the same page with the vision of the company, then the message is unified. And where you see this functioning well in very profitable companies is that even the new hire in the company, when dealing with a customer, if they know that vision intimately, they're handling that customer in the best way possible. So a clear vision is absolutely critical for leadership as well as your team. And I thought this is a staggering statistic. More than 70% of employees do not know their company vision. I think that's a problem. I would want to eradicate that in any company that I worked with. Every single person must not only know, but be inspired by and be on the same page with the company's vision. A recent Harvard Business Review article found even in high-performing companies which had clearly articulated public strategies, only 29% of employees could correctly identify their company's strategy. That's a problem. Vision and strategy are both important, but there's a priority to them. I mean, vision must come first. You have to know where you're going before you can employ a strategy. So if you have a clear vision, you will eventually attract the right strategy. But if you don't have a clear vision, no strategy is going to save you. You need to know where you're going before you can implement steps to get there. So there's 4 keys to creating an effective vision statement. And what I work with companies when creating vision statement is, first of all, we have to look at what framework. What's your mission statement? I need to know what the mission is of the company. What are your core competencies? We are going to use these issues as a starting point for articulating your values. And second, we look ahead. Think farther ahead than just the next 1 to 3 years. Your vision statement should really fall somewhere in the range of 4 to 8 years, but 5 years is about the standard that most organizations follow. So where do you want to be in 5 years? What's your vision 5 years from now? And does every single one of your employees understand that? Third, make it simple. And some organizations will make an all-encompassing statement that is a paragraph or more in length, and you want to avoid that. People have a hard time remembering it or embracing anything that's too long. You have a much better chance of getting everybody on board and on the same page, and also very inspired and motivated if your vision statement is just a sentence or 2 in length. And then revisit your vision statement every year or 2. And the reason is that as time passes, things can change. And so we want to reevaluate, is the vision still relevant for us? And don't be afraid to update it and keep it current. It's not static. It does not need to remain the same, because it's growing and it's breathing and it's alive. The more alive your vision statement is, the more true it is, the more real it is for those functioning within the company. So how do we create profit in this new economy? Well, to really recap everything we've said, I mean, you've got to build loyal relationships through your engagement, through your relationship to your customer as well as your employees. So this actually will create a buffer during any sort of downturns. Having a clear vision will create a roadmap that you can navigate, and anything that's unseen, a potential pitfall in this rapidly changing environment that we're in, as long as you have a clear vision, you will be able to maneuver around those. I do think critical to creating profit in the new economy is early adoption of new and emerging technologies. So social media metrics and big data play a part of this, in that it offers an advantage over your competitors who are very slow to adopt. And reviewing historic trends and analyzing current trends creates a window for picking up on future opportunities. And very important, I think, is keeping tabs on customer motivations and understanding their desires via the big data that we can collect in software analytics. And this is really the key to future growth and profit, is understanding the consumer, understanding their purchasing decisions, understanding their feelings, and then meeting them where they're at through our active engagement. So we build a partnership, we build a relationship. And this is how I believe we create profit in the new economy, through building fantastic relationships. So now I will open it up for questions.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Tamara McCleary. Folks, now we are open for the question and answers. If you have any questions, you could either raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on the webinar console, or you could put it in the question box, and I'll be happy to read them over on your behalf. So let me go straight to the question box. There are a couple of interesting questions. Let me begin with the first one. Ms. Tamara, what do you advise organizations about developing or producing the content that is precise and to the point to be shared in compliance with social media regulations?
My best recommendation, and I think that that's a brilliant question. It's a very good question. And my recommendation is the content that you would want to share is what you feel is relevant to your consumer. What do they care most about? So that you can structure your communication to hit them where they're feeling. And that's probably your best route through social media because, again, our social media for a company does not need to be a broadcast. Nobody wants to see advertisements on social media. What they want is to feel like they're getting to know you and you're talking about things that are relevant and important to your customer.
Okay, thank you. There's another one. So it's big data in layman terms is classifying the information overload intelligently and extract the information at the right time at the right place?
It's that and more. Yes, and big data is, I mean, we're collecting so much data right now on consumers. I mean, we are collecting, on a mobile device, we have the ability to collect where they're at in a grocery store and tag that to their purchasing decision to pick Cheerios over Rice Krispies. So the issue with big data is that we have so much information now on consumers and their purchasing decisions that it's a scramble right now for companies to analyze that data, make heads or tails of it, and then use it appropriately to increase their engagement with the customer. And engagement can even be pushing through coupons to the phone. Or saying, hey, on aisle 9, I see you're in aisle 7. On aisle 9, we have a sale on such and such product. And this is why, with big data and capturing all this information, we are having the conversation now about what is creepy. I hope you, when I say creepy, that communicates creepy versus responsive. So big data has a lot to do with the fact that we can capture a lot about consumer behavior, and now we're just trying to work it through to figure out how we can respond to the customer in the most appropriate manner.
Okay, thank you very much. Another one on the big data. Can you name any companies which have successfully implemented big data strategies? Not
that I would say on the webinar. I think that right now most companies are, this is so cutting edge right now. I mean, big data is huge. This is why everybody's talking about it, that everybody's still trying to figure out what to do with all that information. Like I said, I really think the best visual I can give to you right now on big data is trying to take a drink from a fire hose. And because there's so much information right now.
Hey, thank you very much. Another one. You mentioned again, it's on the content. I think it's supplementary to what we had asked earlier. You mentioned content must be engaging. Could you please elaborate a bit more about it? How would you define engagement or engaging?
How I would define, I think that's a great question. How I would define engagement is back and forth communication. So if you have someone who has tweeted you or responded to a post that you made on Facebook or LinkedIn, engagement is responding back. So answering back. It's not one way. So engagement is measured not only in your response back, but in how timely you responded back, because we can measure that on metrics. We know not only when you did respond, but how quickly you responded. So we're measuring those. And so engagement is, think of engagement this way, a communication versus a post. It's a back and forth. Whenever you see people tweeting back and forth, that's engagement. Whenever you see people communicating on Facebook underneath a post back and forth, that's engagement. So that's what I mean by engagement. Does that answer the question?
Well, yeah, I guess well explained. So, but Let me move to the next question now. Yeah. Okay. All right. There's another one. What would you advise an organization as a first step to move towards adapting a big data strategy?
That's a big question and a great question. I would say the scope of the webinar, that's such a huge question, because if I'm engaging with a company and looking at how they would use big data, a couple of things are important. First of all, what is the product or service? Who's the target market? What kinds of data are you currently collecting or have you collected? What are you using? And looking at whether or not you are currently communicating with your customer. I mean, the first step would be to analyze what's currently being utilized, what model, whether or not that needs to change. Secondly, I would say immediately I would want to know is, are your customers engaged? Do we even have a vehicle with which to begin to communicate with them? But to tell a company how to use big data, you almost have to go in and look at what the company is currently doing, what structure.
Okay, thank you very much. That really brings us towards the end of the webinar now. Before we dismiss out, Ms. McCleary, any concluding remarks that you would like to give?
I would just say that I think this is a very exciting time, and I know it has marketers and chief marketing officers of companies scrambling. It's a crazy time, it's a wild time, but it's a fantastic time because we really do have now more than ever the ability to wield an enormous amount of power and influence through harnessing social media, through harnessing the web, through harnessing data that we can now collect that we've never had before. And I think it's a great time to be alive right now and in business. I think that sky is definitely not even our limit, and it's just wildly thrilling what we can do right now and how we can reach our customers like never before. And the one thing I would say is your most important asset is your ability to connect with people on a social level and build relationships that foster trust and a feeling that your customer is a part of you and your company. And that, to me, is an incredible, incredible opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Tamara McCleary. I really want to thank you on behalf of the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship for a very interesting presentation that you've given. And thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We are recording it. It will be uploaded on Mile Community. So please stay tuned to webinar.mile.org to learn more about our upcoming webinars and access the video and webinar archives as well. Once again, thank you, everyone. Special thanks to Ms. Tamara McCleary, and thank you all of those who participated. On that note, we'd like to end this webinar, so you all will be automatically dismissed out. You all have a good day.
Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.